Hey guys, welcome to my first video on this channel. I'm gonna be doing a character deck of Ruby Rose from the show Ruby. For those of my Ruby fans and Yu-Gi-Oh fans, this is gonna be a deck I think Ruby would really use amongst if Yu-Gi-Oh was in the show Ruby, and if anyone would like to add this deck into whatever or try and test it out and play it, be my guest. This is a rough draft of what I think Ruby would play. If you guys would like to adjust it to your playstyle, by all means, feel free. So let's get into it. So first off, when I was building this deck, I was trying to think of cards Ruby would actually play, and I feel like she'd play more of a pure base synchro deck above anything else. So let's get into the main deck. We'll start with the monsters. First, I think Ruby would play 3 copies of Red Rose Dragon. Reason being because what it does is if this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can special summon 1 Rose Dragon monster from your hand or deck except Red Rose Dragon. Then if it was sent for the synchro summon of Black Rose Dragon or a plant synchro monster, you can also add 1 Frozen Rose or 1 Blooming of the Darkest Rose from your deck to your hand. So basically, I think she would really play this card because it not only is a tuner so she can synchro summon with it, but when it's used to synchro summon, she can get 1 Rose Dragon to her. She can get 1 more Rose Dragon to the field, which would really help her get more of her plays off and more of her synchro monsters on the field. And then she can also get 1 of her spells or traps to her hand, like Frozen Rose or Blooming of the Dark Rose. That's why I feel like she'd play 3 copies of this card. The next card I think she would play 3 copies of is Rox Rose Dragon. I feel like this would be one of her main Rose Dragons she would try to play at the beginning of every duel, is because it's not only just a tuner so she can synchro summon with it, but also if this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 card that mentions Black Rose Dragon from your deck to your hand except Rox Rose Dragon. So she can not only, so basically when this card is summoned, either normal or special, she basically can get almost any of her cards out of her deck because almost all of them mention Black Rose Dragon. Its second effect is while this card is in your graveyard, if a face-up Rose Dragon monster or monsters or plant synchro monster you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can add this card to your hand. So she can always get this card back from the grave if her opponent ever gets rid of 1 of her Rose Dragon monsters or 1 of her plant synchro monsters. That's why I feel like she'd play 3 copies of this card just like Red Rose Dragon, because I feel like it would really help her out more. So 3 Rox Rose Dragons. The next card I feel like she'd play 3 copies of is White Rose Dragon, because when this card is normal summon, you can special summon 1 Rose Dragon monster from your hand or graveyard except White Rose Dragon. So I feel like this would be more of a card she would play later in the duel, because she would at least want a Rose Dragon monster in the grave to be able to bring it back with that effect. And then its other effect is you can only use the effect of White Rose Dragon once per turn. If you control a dragon tuner or plant tuner, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can send 1 level 4 or higher plant monster from your deck to the grave. So not only could she special summon this card to help synchro summon if needed, but she could also send 1 of her level 4 or higher plants to the grave to let off 1 of their effects if needed, amongst other things. So that's why I feel like she'd play 3 White Rose Dragons. The next card I think she would play is only one copy of Blue Rose Dragon, because unlike the other Rose Dragons, it doesn't have that much of a fancy effect. I just feel like she'd play it for more nostalgia, so she has a copy of each Rose Dragon. What this card does is when this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target one Black Rose Dragon or one plant monster in your graveyard and special summon that monster. So again, just like White Rose Dragon, I feel like this would be a card that it would be very rare for her to draw, but when she does draw it and she plays it, it would probably be later in the duel. Those would be the Rose Dragons I feel like she'd play in the main deck. Three Red Rose Dragon, three Rocks Rose Dragon, three White Rose Dragon, and one Blue Rose Dragon. The next monster I think she'd play would be two copies of Rose Princess, only because with this card, she can special summon this card if her opponent controls a monster, and then if it was summoned that way, it can be treated as a tuner. And then on top of that, she could just discard this card to add her White Rose Field spell, which is this, which we'll get to later, to her hand, pretty much. So it could either be, she could either use it as a tuner or get her field spell, depending on what she needs in that moment. So I feel like that would be two Rose Princess to pretty much all she would really need for the deck. The next card I think she would play would be two copies of Vengeful Witch, because Vengeful Witch pretty much allows her to, if she controls a Black Rose Dragon, a monster that mentions it, or a plant synchro monster, she can special summon this card from her hand, which opens up her up to more synchro summoning. And then also, if this card would be in the grave and a synchro monster on the field, she can just discard this card and special summon a plant monster with 1500 or less defense from her deck, which is also pretty cool. So I feel like two copies of Vengeful Witch is plenty. You could probably get away with three copies if you would prefer to play that many copies, but I think two copies would be plenty for this deck. The next card I think she would play would be one copy of Twilight Rose Black Knight, because what Twilight Rose Black Knight does is, while you control a synchro monster, plant monsters you control not only gain 1,000 attack, but then, sadly you can only use that effect once per turn, but its other effect is, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon one Black Rose Dragon or one level 4 or lower plant monster from your grave, but negate its effects. So you would sadly, if you did bring Black Rose Dragon to the field, it wouldn't have its effect. Or if you brought one of your plant monsters from the grave to the field, you couldn't use their effects because it would be negated, sadly. So just keep that in mind. That's why there's only one copy of this in the deck. It is a tuner, though, but it does have one more effect, which is you can target one other plant monster you control and increase or decrease its level by 1, which does help a little easier with synchro summoning. The next card I think she would play would be three copies of Princess Draconiran, the Thistling Tree, because I feel like this would be a great three copy for her deck, because since it's not just a tuner and a plant, so it would already work with a lot of her plant monsters effects that we just went over, but also you can pretty much send a level 4 or lower plant monster from your deck to the grave, except this card, and then you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, it becomes that set monster's level, which is pretty cool. So basically just, let's say you sent your White Rose Dragon to the graveyard, then you summon your princess here, she becomes a level 4, which is really cool. Also, you can banish one plant monster and this card from your graveyard to special summon one dragon monster from your hand or graveyard, which is pretty cool. For example, like let's say you banish that plant monster with her and you had like Black Rose Dragon in the grave. You could bring Black Rose Dragon back to the field, which is pretty cool. The next ability it has is Sadly, you can only use each effect once per turn. Also, you cannot special summon the turn you activated either of these effects except dragon or plant monsters. So it does limit you to only plant and dragon monsters to special summon that turn you use her effect, but it's pretty worth it. So 3 copies of her is pretty recommended. You could get away with 2 copies if you wanted to make more room for different cards if you'd prefer that. The next card I think Ruby would play. This next card it has a good effect that I feel like helps the deck, but I also feel like it's more of just since Ruby's deck is more flower rose based, I feel like a card like Spore the Fairy Seed is kind of a good because it's not only has spore in the name, but it also has seed in the name. And flowers usually come from seeds and stuff. But it's not just a tuner, so it's a tuner and it's a plant, which is pretty helpful with more, as I said, all your effects really mostly resolve around plant type monsters. But what this card does is, if this card is special summon, you can count the number of monsters you control and have this card gain up to that many levels. So pretty much, let's say it's special summoned it, and you had, uh, 3 rose dragons on the field. It would gain 3 extra levels on top of its level 1, bringing it up to a level 4. Its other ability is if you control ancient fairy, dragon, or a light monster, beast, plant, or fairy, and this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card, which is pretty cool to help pull off its first effect. And you do have quite a bit of light monsters, plant monsters in this deck, especially with your synchros, so that's why there's only really 1 copy of this in the deck. The next card is going to be 1 copy of Glow Up Beleb. I think that's how you say its name. Basically, you can only use its effect once per duel, so that's why there's only 1 copy of it. But it is a tuner, and what it does is, if this card is in your graveyard, you can send the top card of your deck to the grave, and if you do, you can special summon this card. You can only use the effect of this card once per duel, like I just said. But basically, it would allow you to get it from the grave to synchro summon if needed. The next card you're going to play 1 copy of is Spay Duskwalker. Reason being is we have 2 synchro monsters in the extra deck that really revolve around this. And that's what this card does is you can discard 1 card, special summon this card from your hand in defense position. Then you can special summon 1 spray from your hand or deck. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck the turn you activate this effect, except synchro monsters. So again, as I said, that's why it's mostly, I feel like Ruby would mostly play a synchro deck, because some of her cards do only allow her to synchro summon after their effect resolves. So basically, you could use Duskwalker, bring out your Spay here, you tune them together, and bring out your Moon Dragon here, which we'll get to in a minute. The next card you're going to want to play 1 copy of is 1 Oracle of the Sun. With this card, it's kind of like Duskwalker, but different. What it does is, if only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. When this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the grave, you can add 1 Fire Ant or Spray from your deck to your hand. So you could use his effect when he's destroyed to get your Fire Ant here. Then you can somehow tune your Fire Ant with something to bring out your Sun Dragon here. So the next card you're going to want to play is obviously 1 Spray, which doesn't do much. Basically, if it was sent from the field to the grave by card effect, you can special summon 1 Oracle of the Sun from your deck. If you do, double its attack. Also return it to your hand during the end phase. That's all it does. And you're also going to play 1 Fire Ant, which when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you can target one level 5 monster in your grave, special summon that target, but its effects are negated. Also send it to the grave during the end phase of this turn. So, since we're only running one Sun Dragon and one Moon Dragon, that's why you only really need one Dusk Walker, one Oracle of the Sun, one Spay, and then one Fire Ant for this deck. The next card you're going to want to play is one copy of Romania? What she does is she's not just a tuner and a plant, but her effect is quick effect. You can target one face-up monster you control, send one other plant monster you control to the graveyard, and if you do, the next time the targeted monster would be destroyed by battle or card effect this turn. It is not destroyed. If this card is sent to the grave by card effect, you can send one level 5 or lower plant monster from your deck or extra deck to the grave. So the reason I added one copy of this is because you could use this, maybe send one of your level 5 or lower plant monsters from your extra deck, like your Garden Rose Maiden, and then bring it back with your Princess here, which is really good. Or if you'd prefer to do one from your deck, that works as well. The next card I feel like Ruby would play is one copy of Planet Pathfinder, because since Terraforming is only one copy, and you can only use one copy of Terraforming in your deck, I feel like Ruby would want to have another card that would allow her to play her field spells a lot easier. And what Pathfinder does is you can just tribute it, add a field spell to from your deck to your hand, which is pretty nice. The next card I think Ruby would play would be two Fuelos, mainly for its ability to draw cards. That's why there's only two in this deck. And basically, what it does is each time your opponent special summons a monster from the deck or extra deck, you immediately get to draw one card. So let's say your opponent's playing a deck that allows them to special summon multiple monsters. That just allows you to draw more cards. Again, that's also why this deck's is over 40 cards. But you're going to want to play two of him. Next card you're going to want to play is 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Now, the reason I didn't use Ghost Belle or Orange Light, or however you say its name, is because I felt like Ash Blossom more matched this deck, and it's a really good hand trap because of its, well, Blossom and Ruby flowers and everything. So 3 copies of Ash Blossom really helps to help protect your deck from card effects. But that's going to be it for your monsters, which I think it's a pretty good monster setup. You got some mainly Rose stuff to help bring out your synchros, and then some other support stuff in there to help get the cards you need. Moving on to spells. For spells, you're going to want to start off with Black Rose Garden, and you're going to want 3 copies of this. The reason is this is going to be one of your best spell cards. Yes, you can only play one Black Rose Garden a turn, and you can only have one on the field at a time. But it allows you to not only, when this card is activated, you can add a Rose Dragon monster from your deck or grave to your hand, which, let's say you had Rox Rose in the grave and you wanted to get it back to the hand, or you had White Rose in the deck and you wanted to get it to the hand. It really helps with that. The next thing is all face-up monsters on the field become plant monsters. So as long as this card's on the field, all monsters on your field and your opponent's field will be plant monsters. And then its other effect is if this card is destroyed, inflict 100 damage to your opponent for each plant monster in your graveyard and banish zone. So, and since a lot of your monsters are plants, you can realistically inflict a lot of damage to your opponent that way. Uh, then if this card was destroyed by the card effect of Black Rose Dragon, so if you use Black Rose Dragon effect when it's summoned to destroy all cards on the field, Black Rose Garden would inflict 2400 damage to your opponent, which is really good. And as I said, you can only use the effect of this card once per turn, and you can only activate one Black Rose Garden per turn. So, the reason you're going to play 3 of it is so one, you can, throughout the duel, if they get rid of one, you always are guaranteed to draw another one. Helps you do the effects better. You could get away with only 2 copies if you'd prefer, but I prefer playing 3 just so I'm always guaranteed at least 1 or 2 throughout the duel. The next spell card you're going to want to play is 2 copies of Frozen Rose. Mainly because this card, what it does is you can send one face-up monster you control to the graveyard and then apply the effect depending on the type of the monster it was. If it was a plant monster during your end phase, you get to draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card. If it wasn't a plant monster, you can add 1 level 4 or lower plant monster from your deck to your hand. So you can only use this card once per turn, though. But basically, let's say the plant monster you sent was your Spore the Fairy Seed. Then you get to draw 2 cards, discard a card. Or let's say the card you sent was your Red Rose Dragon. Since it's not a plant, you would get to add a level 4 or lower plant monster from your deck to your hand. Like, let's say at the time you needed your Vengeful Witch, you'd get that. So 2 copies of Frozen Rose is really good. You can add a third one if you'd prefer. I'd recommend playing only 2 because it's not a card you always want to draw, but there's at least 2 copies in there, so you're guaranteed at least to draw one. The next spell you're going to want to play is Bristle Rose Shot. You're going to want to play 2 copies of this. And what this card does is it allows you to special summon 1 Rose Dragon monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position. So you can either summon one of your Rose Dragons like White Rose, Rocks Rose, Red Rose, or Blue Rose from your hand or grave. Or realistically, if you had Black Rose Dragon, Rudy Rose Dragon, Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, or your Bumble Rose Dragon in the grave, you could realistically bring that out too. Its other effect is if this set card is destroyed, you can target one of your Black Rose Dragon or one monster that mentions it that is banished or in your graveyard, and then you can special summon it. So let's say you had this card face down on the field and your opponent did Mystical Space Typhoon and destroyed it. You could use it to bring out either your Black Rose Dragon to the field or one of your cards that mentions it, like your, let's see, your, Brimble Rose Dragon, for example. So, Bristle Rose Shot's a really good card to play 2 copies of. I don't really see you ever needing 3 copies of it. You could play 1 copy if you wanted, but I don't really see the point of playing 3 copies of it. The next card you're going to want to play is 1 copy of Mark of the Rose. The reason there's only 1 copy of this is because I feel like it's a card Ruby would probably play for the fun of it, and I don't think it would help a lot, but I feel like it's such a nostalgia card. Like, it was one of the original Rose cards that came out back in the day, so I feel like that would be a good one. Basically what it does is you can activate this card by banishing 1 plant monster from your grave, then target 1 monster your opponent controls. Equip this card to it and take control of that equipped monster once per turn. During your end phase, negate the card's effect until your next standby phase. So it would stay equipped to the monster on your turn, but the second your turn ends, that monster goes back to your opponent. until your next standby phase where you can take control of it again. That's why there's only one copy of this in the deck. The next spell card you're going to want to play is one of your field spell, which is your White Rose. Here, I can't say that other one, but I'll try for you guys. Colorister, I think is how you say it. But this is going to be one of your best field spells. You could throw a second copy in there if you'd prefer. I think one copy's plenty, though. What it does, though, is if you control no monsters, you can special summon a rose monster or a plant monster from your hand, in addition to your normal summon, which is pretty cool. You can only use that effect once per turn, though. During your draw phase, before you draw, you can declare one card type, monster, spell, or trap, reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's the declared card type, you can apply this effect for the rest of the turn, which is level 7 or higher synchro monsters you control gain 1,000 attack, which is really good. Yes, you kind of got to be lucky and got to call the top card of your deck right to use it, but it's still pretty good. The next card you're going to want to play is your second field spell, which is going to be Black Garden. What Black Garden does is if a monster or monsters is normal or special summoned face up, except by the effect of Black Garden, have its attack. Then the controller special summons a rose token, plant dark, level 2, attack 800, defense 800 to their opponent's field and attack position. So to put it in perspective for you guys, if let's say you summoned your White Rose Dragon, its attack would not only be cut in half, but then you get to summon a rose token to your opponent's field. Or if your opponent summoned a monster, their monster's attack would be halved, and then they would summon a token to your field. So that's how that works. Also, the attack loss remains even after this card leaves the field. So any monster summoned with this card, Black Garden, on the field, when its attack was cut in half, it would still keep its attack cut in half even after Black Garden left the field. Also, you can target one monster in your graveyard with attack equal to the total attack of all plant monsters on the field. Destroy this card and as many plant monsters on the field as possible. Then, if you destroyed all of them, special summon that targeted monster. Which is pretty good because you can get rid of the field and then get a monster out on the field. The next spell you're going to play is one copy of Terraform Inc. Because like Planet Pathfinder, it allows you to add one field spell from your deck to your hand just without the cost of tributing anything like Planet Pathfinder. The next spell you're going to want to play is two copies of Forbidden Droplet. Just like Ash Blossom, this is going to be another one of your hand traps you're going to want to play. Basically, you can send any number of other cards from your hand in or field to the graveyard. Choose that many effect monsters your opponent controls. Until the end of the turn, their attack is cut in half. Also, their effects are negated. In response to this card's activation, your opponent cannot activate cards or the effects of cards with the same original type, monster, spell, or trap. As the card sent to the grave is activate this card, you can only activate one Forbidden Droplet per turn. So it not only cuts your opponent's monster's attack in half, but it also negates their effects, and they can't activate their effects in response to this card to the same original type of cards that you sent to the grave to use this effect. I recommend only keeping two Forbidden Droplet. If you wanted to, you could add something else like Call by the Grave, Forbidden Crown, stuff like that, to really replace Forbidden Droplet if you'd prefer something like that. Now this last spell card is it's not a common card, it's a really old card, but I feel like it's something Ruby Rose would play. And that's Field Barrier. It's a continuous spell card. It's an old spell card. But what it does basically is field spells on the field cannot be destroyed. Neither player can activate a new field spell. You can only control one field barrier. So it not only would protect her field spells, but it would also prevent her opponent from activating a field spell, which is pretty nice. But that's going to be it for the spell cards. Now we're going to move on to the trap cards. There's not a lot of trap cards in this deck because I couldn't really think of a lot of other traps to play in this deck. But the trap cards that are going to be in this deck is one copy of Blooming of the Darkest Rose. What this card does is it allows you to special summon Rose tokens in defense position to either field up to the combined number of cards in the field zone and field spells in the graveyard. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target one Black Rose Dragon or one plant monster in your monster zone, banish it, and if you do, place this card on the bottom of the deck during the next standby phase. Return that banished monster to the field. You can only use the effect of this card, Blooming of the Darkest Rose, once per turn. So this card, it won't help you a lot, but it does have its uses in certain sticky situations. The next trap card you're going to want to play is two copies of Wall of Thorns because it's basically a mirror force just for plant type monsters. Basically, when a plant type monster you control is targeted for an attack, destroy all the attack position monsters your opponent controls. So, and since most of your deck is plant type monsters, this is a really good card. The next card you're going to want to play is one copy of Infinite Imprisonment. That's another hand trap. Basically, it would allow you to stop your opponent's monster effects. And then lastly, two Dominus Impulses, which I think is really good. Because if your opponent controls a card, you can activate this card from your hand. When a card or effect is activated, that includes an effect that special summons a monster. Negate that effect. Then if you have a trap in your grave, destroy that card. If you activated this card from your hand, you cannot activate the effects of light, earth, and wind monsters for the rest of this duel. So, that's a really good card, I think, especially if your opponent plays light, earth, and wind monsters. Sadly, that would affect you too, because you do have a couple light and earth monsters in here. So I recommend use these two traps very, very carefully. But that's going to be it for the main deck. Moving on to the side deck, we have, first starting off, Black Rose Dragon. You're going to want to play two copies of this card. Obviously, it's a very common card for this deck, and I feel like it would be Ruby's ace card. What it does is when this card is synchro summoned, you can discard all cards on the field. You can destroy all cards on the field once per turn. You can banish one plant monster from the graveyard, then target one defense position monster your opponent controls, and change that target to attack position, and if you do, its attack becomes 0 until the end of this turn. So it has two pretty good effects you could throw in there. It's a level 7 too, so it's a little easier to summon. So you're going to play two Black Rose Dragons. Next, you're going to play one copy of Rudy Rose Dragon. Rudy Rose Dragon is, if this card is synchro summoned, you can banish all cards from the graveyard. Then if this card was synchro summoned using Black Rose Dragon or a plant synchro monster as material, you can destroy all other cards on the field. When your opponent activates a card or effect that would destroy a card or cards, quick effect, you contribute this card, negate the activation, then you can special summon one Black Rose Dragon from your extra deck or your graveyard. So it not only allows you to banish cards from the grave, destroy cards on the field, but also allows you to negate cards and allows you to summon Black Rose Dragon, which is really good, but you're only going to play one copy of Rudy Rose Dragon. The next card you're going to play is one copy of Black Rose Moonlight Dragon. What this card does is if this card is special summoned or a level 5 or higher monsters is special summoned to your opponent's field, target one special summon monster your opponent controls, return that target to the hand, and you can only use the effect of this card once per turn. So this would be more of a card to try and return cards to your opponent's hand above anything else. Next card you're going to want to play is two copies of Brimble Rose Dragon. Reason it's going to be two copies of this is because what it does is each time your opponent activates a monster effect, inflicts 600 damage to your opponent, and if you do, all monsters your opponent currently control lose 600 attack. You can only use each of the following effects of this card once per turn. During the main phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card. Special summon one Black Rose Dragon from your extra deck. You can banish this card from your graveyard and special summon one level 4 or lower plant tuner from your grave. So it not only allows you to inflict damage to your opponent, it also allows you to decrease your opponent's monster's attack. It allows you to tribute this card to bring Black Rose Dragon out, and then you can immediately banish this card after bringing Black Rose Dragon out. You can banish this card from your grave to special summon a tuner from your grave, which is really good. So you're going to want two copies of her. The next monster you're going to want in your extra deck is going to be Ancient Fairy Dragon. Now, the reason is because this is going to help you a little easier with your, it's not that card. It's not that card. Where are you? I don't know where it is right now, but Ancient Fairy Dragon's going to help you with that other card and a few other things to help. Oh, right here. It's going to help you with Spore the Fairy Seed. That's what Ancient Fairy Dragon's really going to help you with. Also, Ancient Fairy Dragon has a good effect, which is during your main phase, you could special summon one level 4 or lower monster from your hand, which helps with your normal summon, so you can summon another monster outside of your normal summon. Then you cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect, sadly. But during your main phase, you can destroy as many cards on the field zone as possible, -1. And if you do gain 1,000 life points, then you can add one field spell with different name. Then the destroyed card from your deck to your hand. You can only use each of her effects once per turn. So you do with her not just from helping with Spore the Fairy Seed, you also get to summon another monster. You get to gain 1,000 life points. You get to get rid of your opponent's field spell, and then you also get to destroy some cards off your opponent's field, which is pretty nice. The next card you're going to play is one copy of Rage Rose Witch. Mainly because basically this card allows you to not only protect your play monsters from being destroyed, it also allows you to send up to one play monster each from your deck and extra deck to the graveyard. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of this turn except synchro monsters you use that effect. But it also allows you to, if a card on the field is destroyed by a card effect, while this card's in your grave, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card back to the field, which is pretty nice. So, for example, you could use it for that, getting rid of a play monster from your deck, an extra deck to the grave. You could use it to get rid of quite a few things like your Blimble Rose Dragon or a play monster from your main deck to pull off some more combos. The next, so you're only going to play one Rage Rose Witch. Next, you're going to play one copy of Garden Rose Maiden. Mainly because what she does is when this card is special summon, you can add a black garden from your deck or grave to your hand. So that's can be either your field spell or your Black Rose Garden continuous spell. Also, you can banish this card from your grave, then target one Rose Dragon monster or one Dragon Synchro monster in your grave and special summon it. So with that, you can also either bring out any of your Rose Dragons up here, or you can bring Black Rose Dragon, Rudy Rose Dragon, Moonlight Dragon, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, Beals the Diabolical Dragon, basically because it just says one Rose Dragon monster or one Dragon Synchro monster. So it's pretty nice. One copy of her. Now we get into the Sun Dragon and Moon Dragon that we use Duskwalker, Oracle of the Sun, Spray, and Fire Ant to summon. Sun Dragon here, what he does is he does require Fire Ant and one non-tuner monster to summon him. But if this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you can destroy the monster that destroyed this card, and then you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to half the attack of that monster. Also, during your standby phase of the next turn after this card on the field is destroyed, you can summon your Moon Dragon in your graveyard and special summon it. Moon Dragon, basically it's the opposite of Sun Dragon. Instead of dealing damage to your opponent, you gain life points. So if this card is targeted for an attack, gain life points to equal to half the attacking monster's attack. If this card on the field is destroyed, you can target one Sun Dragon in your graveyard and special summon that target, which is pretty nice. So one copy of Sun Dragon and one copy of Moon Dragon. Next, you're going to want to play one copy of Chaos Angel. I feel like Ruby would really probably play something like Chaos Angel, mainly because light and dark, and I feel like it matches the little bit of Ruby's lighter side, her excitation, her happiness, and a bit of her darker half where she's starts getting depressed and down over time. And I feel like this would be a card that would kind of match the balance between the two. Basically, if you synchro this with a light non-tuner monster, synchro monsters you control are unaffected by monster effects activated by your opponent. And if instead of a light monster it was a dark monster, monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. So Chaos Angel's a pretty nice card. It's also got 3,500 attack points, which is insane. The next card you're going to want to play is one Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. If Yu-Gi-Oh! Was in the show of Ruby, I feel like Ruby would have gotten this card, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, from her friend Weiss as like a gift or something. And because what Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon does is pretty much when another monster effect is activated, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that monster. And then if you do that, this card gains attack equal to destroyed monster's original attack until the end of the turn. And then also, if this card battles an opponent's level 5 or higher monster during the damage calculation, this card gains an additional attack equal to the current attack of your opponent's monster. So he can become a really high damaging card while also negating your opponent's card effects, pretty much. Also, he's a dragon, so you can bring him out with your other cards like your princess here, or etc., etc. The next card you're going to want to play is Beetles of the Diabolical Dragon. I couldn't really think of another card for this deck that Ruby would play, so I kind of just added Beetles, mainly because it's red. Not gonna lie to you, that was the only reason I really added this card. But it does have a pretty OP effect. It does require a Dark Tuner plus one non-tuner monster. Cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. If you take damage from an attack involving this card, or from an opponent's card effect, this card gains attack equal to the damage you took. So it's not only pretty much invincible, but it just gains more and more attack over time, which is pretty crazy. Next, for the last card of this deck, is going to be Zelen, the Shock-Lid Dragon. Now, the main reason I added this card was, again, for its effect. It is a tuner also. If this card you control would be used as synchro material, you can treat it as a non-tuner when a card or effect is activated in response to another card or effect activation quick effect. You can activate one of these effects. Negate the first effect if you do destroy that card. The second effect is negate the second effect, and if you do destroy that card. So basically, it's a really good card to counter chain effects, pretty much. But that's it for the deck, and that's what I really think Ruby Rose would play, is if she played a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. This is what I roughly think she would run. There's probably a few minor changes you could do to this deck if you want to copy it and build it yourself. There's 100 different ways you can play this deck. It's up to your preference, really, but this was mainly what I thought Ruby would play amongst anything else. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. If you guys want to see more decks that I feel like characters would use, please let me know in the comments which character you would like to see next. It doesn't have to be a Ruby character. It can be any character from an anime, a TV show, cartoon, maybe a YouTuber, whatever you want to see. But I hope you guys have a great day, and I'm sorry if my voice was a little rough throughout this video. I have been recovering from a cold. I hope you all have a great day. See you next time.